Ever find yourself fiddling with an app or browsing a website and thinking, man, I could have designed this so much better? You, my friend, you might have a hidden product manager inside. Luckily for you, we're doing a deep dive into RoleCatcher's career guide. Will help you unlock that potential.
They really have put together a fantastic resource. It's interesting. The guide doesn't just jump into skills and salaries right off the bat. It really emphasizes how relevant product management is becoming, and not just in tech, but across industries.
Right. Like that makes sense though, right? I mean,
Yeah.
every company wants to create those amazing products, the ones that people actually use and want and need. So where does RoleCatcher say we should begin?
Well, they make a point that honestly surprised me at first. A huge part of being a product manager is, get this, understanding people.
Okay.
Yeah, you're managing a product, sure, but you're also managing expectations,
Yeah.
and collaborating with all these different teams and really getting inside the heads of your users.
Mm.
It's almost like being like an amateur psychologist.
Okay. So it's not just about being a spreadsheet whiz, which I thought it was, but it's about really understanding human behavior, like what makes people pick,
Yeah, exactly.
the motivation and all that. But RoleCatcher they do outline some pretty specific responsibilities for someone in this role, right?
Mm-hmm.
What does a product manager actually do all day?
So they have this great analogy in the guide, and I love this. Picture an orchestra conductor, right?
Okay, yeah.
You've got your strings, your brass, percussion, all that. In the product world, that's your engineering team, your marketing team, your design team, all these different groups working on different pieces of the product.
Right.
The product manager, they're the ones who bring everybody together, make sure they're all in sync, and creates this harmonious product symphony, so to speak.
I love that.
Yeah.
But I imagine it can be a little bit more chaotic than, conducting Beethoven.
Oh, yeah.
RoleCatcher does mention the potential for stress, especially when you're juggling all those needs, stakeholders, marketing demands. Have you found that to be true?
Absolutely. It is one of the most, I think, challenging and rewarding aspects of the job. You're constantly balancing these priorities. You're making tough decisions, navigating roadblocks left and right. RoleCatcher's work environment section really hits the nail on the head there.
Yeah.
It's not always glamorous, let me tell you, but it is never, ever boring.
Okay. So we've established that product managers are basically the conductors of the business world,
Yeah.
navigating chaos, keeping everyone in tune. But let's break it down a little further. RoleCatcher outlines several career stages, from entry level all the way up to the VP level. Where do you think is the best place to really start unpacking this career path?
That's a good question. Let's take a cue from RoleCatcher's playbook. They've included these incredibly helpful example profiles for each stage. Instead of just listing skills, which can be kind of, boring,
Yeah.
they show us what those skills actually look like in action.
I love that.
So I think that's a great jumping off point.
I'm all about real-world examples. Let's dive into those career stages and see how the role evolves over time. So we're talking about those example profiles that RoleCatcher uses.
Right.
It's one thing to say you'll need problem-solving skills. It's a whole other thing to see how someone actually used those skills, in the real world to make a difference. Where does RoleCatcher kick things off?
They start with an entry-level product manager, someone who's, just dipping their toes into the product management waters.
Okay.
Think of it like an apprentice conductor.
Okay.
You're not leading the whole orchestra yet, but you're learning the ropes, assisting with things like market research, maybe even pitching in on new product ideas, just soaking up as much knowledge as you can.
Okay, so you're getting your hands dirty,
Exactly.
but you're also getting a feel for that bigger picture. What happens when you move up to that, junior product manager level?
Right.
RoleCatcher had a good example there.
They did. They talk about this junior PM who used their market research skills, right, to identify this customer pain point. Nobody else had noticed this.
Interesting.
And they suggested this small tweak to the product roadmap. And for those listening who aren't familiar, a product roadmap is basically a timeline that outlines the vision and direction of a product.
Okay. It's like the map that the conductor uses to guide the orchestra through the entire symphony.
Exactly. And even though it was a small tweak, this little change actually led to a significant uptick in user engagement.
Whoa.
Which just goes to show that even early in your career, you can have a real impact.
Yeah, that's a great confidence booster, right?
Absolutely.
For someone just starting out. And it ties into what you were saying earlier about really understanding human behavior.
Yeah.
Even a small change,
Yeah.
if it's based on real user needs, can make a big difference.
Huge. And as you progress, you move on up to a full-fledged product manager. The guide emphasizes that you're given more ownership. You're not just like suggesting tweaks to the roadmap anymore. You're driving the whole thing. You're collaborating with engineering, with design, with marketing. You're the conductor, making sure everyone's hitting their cues.
No pressure.
Yeah.
But seriously, that sounds both exhilarating and terrifying.
Oh, yeah.
What does RoleCatcher say about those higher levels, like senior product manager, director, VP?
Yeah.
Do those roles still have that same hands-on element?
It definitely evolves. Yeah. At those senior levels, your orchestra gets a lot bigger. You're not just focused on one product anymore. You might be overseeing an entire product line.
Oh, wow.
Or even aligning the entire product strategy with the company's overall vision,
Wow.
The guide really emphasizes strategic thinking at that level and leadership skills, which makes sense.
So it sounds like as you move up the ranks, it becomes less about being in the weeds of a specific product and more about setting the vision and then empowering others to execute it.
Precisely. You're essentially mentoring a team of conductors, each one responsible for their own section of the orchestra, but you're the one setting the tempo and making sure that entire symphony comes together harmoniously.
I love that analogy. That's great. This has been incredibly insightful, but I'm sure our listeners out there like itching to know, how do I actually get started on this product management journey?
Yeah.
Thankfully, RoleCatcher dedicates a whole section to this, right? So they don't
Yeah.
just leave you hanging after painting this amazing picture of a product management career. They actually give you some pretty concrete steps to get started. They're big on internships, right?
Yeah.
They even mention hackathons, which I don't know about you, but
Yeah.
those always seem kind of intimidating to me.
I get it. The word hackathon can sound like really intense, right?
Yeah.
But RoleCatcher does a good job at kind of demystifying it a bit. They talk about how these events are less about, hardcore coding all night and more about rapid prototyping, working together as a team, and then pitching your ideas in a really effective way.
Right.
You're essentially putting those product management muscles to the test
Okay.
in a really fast-paced environment.
So it's like a crash course in product development. You're kind of thrown into the deep end, but you come out with some real-world experience and probably a better understanding of how to navigate those really, intense situations.
Exactly.
Speaking of intense situations, RoleCatcher had a whole section on interview prep.
Oh,
And I've got to say, these product manager interviews,
Oh, tell me about it.
they can feel like their own beast to tackle.
For sure, for sure. And it's not just about listing off all the skills you have on your resume. It's really about showcasing your thought process. Like, how do you approach these real-world product challenges? And RoleCatcher really stresses the importance of concise communication, which makes a lot of sense because you need to be able to articulate those ideas really clearly and persuasively, especially when you've only got, 20 minutes, 30 minutes to really make an impression.
Yeah. And I imagine those interviews, there's got to be a few curveball questions, right?
Oh, yeah.
Like, how would you improve the design of a toaster? I don't know.
Right. Exactly. Exactly. Behavioral questions are huge in product management interviews.
Right.
It's all about, how do you approach a problem? How do you gather the information? How do you make those decisions when you're under pressure?
Right.
And RoleCatcher actually gives some really great examples of common interview questions. So
Oh, cool.
I think it would be super valuable for our listener to, maybe jot those down and practice.
Yeah, it's like practicing your scales before the big orchestra audition. You know what I mean?
Right.
You want to be prepared for anything they throw at you.
Exactly.
Exactly. Speaking of preparation, we have to talk about certifications.
Ah, yes.
RoleCatcher lists a few, like there's the CPM, the Certified Product Manager, there's Agile certifications, but it feels like every day there's a new certification popping up. What's your take on those? Are those actually essential? Do you need to have those to be successful in this field?
Yeah, that's a question I get asked a lot. And while I wouldn't say they're mandatory, they're not make or break.
Okay.
They can definitely give you an edge, especially when you're just starting out early in your career. I think it's less about the piece of paper that you get at the end and more about what it signals.
Okay.
It shows those potential employers that you're serious about product management, that you're committed to professional development, that you've taken the time to learn those kind of industry standard frameworks.
So it's like having that extra flourish on your conductor's baton. And it might not make or break your performance, but it just adds that touch of polish and professionalism.
Right, exactly. And sometimes it's just about speaking the same language as those hiring managers.
Right.
So if you're familiar with agile methodologies, for example, you're going to understand those principles of iterative development, of collaboration, continuous improvement, all things that are just essential in the world of product management these days.
Right. It's about showing them that you can walk the walk and talk the talk. So we've covered a lot of ground here, from like understanding the role itself to like prepping for those interviews. But before we wrap up, RoleCatcher does offer some pretty incredible resources for job seekers, right?
They do, they do. And I'm particularly impressed with their platform.
Yeah.
I mean, imagine having this tool that analyzes your resume for you,
Oh, cool.
and it looks for skills gaps based on actual product management job descriptions. It's like having a personalized career coach right in your pocket.
That's awesome. And let's not forget, RoleCatcher, they're a product too.
That's right.
They're constantly evolving, improving based on user feedback. It's like they're living proof that the principles that they're like teaching, they actually work.
What a brilliant observation. Seriously,
Right.
they're not just telling us how to be great product managers. They are showing us,
In real time. And on that note, we'll leave our listener with one final thought to ponder.
okay, I like this.
Imagine you're the product manager of your own career.
Ooh,
What's your unique selling proposition? What makes you stand out in this crowded job market?
good stuff.
Keep those product management muscles flexed, and who knows what amazing things you'll achieve.